But we do recognize that as a huge contributor to global carbon sink. But then another carbon source is that decomposing dead material from those standing trees. After a fire, the boles of the trees don't really consume generally. So they're left on the site to decompose, and that releases a lot more carbon. You see a lot more of that releasing over time as those decompose. Then those trees fall, and now they're fuel for another fire. Yeah?
This is a sort of oblique question. The research you're doing, how does that fit in with what the rest of the University of Idaho is doing? Because I know there's Randy Brooks and other programs. And then how is that a piece of what is happening nationally and globally? Because obviously this isn't a problem you can solve or cure. We need a...
Oh, I wish.
So how do you...
I wish I was that smart and I could just, I had that much power, right?
Doing, and how does that fit with what the rest of the world country is doing?
Yeah. So my position at the University of Idaho, I am an instructor, and my primary job is to teach and to outreach. And I would call that research because I have lots of subjects that I research on all the time. If you ask them, they'll tell you that they feel like they're in a cage and I'm poking at them all the time. The University of Idaho is well positioned with the faculty that we have to really to provide information to management, to fire management, to make decisions. But that is where we have a little bit of a break. We have science, we have management. I know what's right. No, I know what's right. I have these tools to solve this problem. I don't have those tools. I have these tools. And as human beings go, I have all this firefighting experience. I know what I'm talking about. I have all this research experience. I know what I'm talking about. And we don't have a lot of talking between the two.
Okay.
There aren't a lot of people that have both an operational fire background and a research background, because that's like being two people. It's hard to have both. There's also a lot of ego involved, right? When is there not? But like in this particular instance, there's like some especially ego involved with academia and big tough fire management folks. That is certainly not the case all the time, and those places that I alluded to that are making these big decisions are the ones that are able to cross that boundary of communication between the two. So what we do as an institution, University of Idaho, we try to collaborate and make sure that the research that's being done is in response to a management question, and so that we are serving a population of people that have a problem and we are trying to create a solution for them. You mentioned Randy Brooks. Randy Brooks is studying firefighter health and wellness. And what we are doing to these firefighters who are asking to spend enormously long hours and really difficult physical things on what are we doing to them, and what are the short and long-term impacts on their bodies. So from that individual perspective, and then we have a whole series of fire history research and fire and climate research, people and fire research. How are we communicating this with the public, and how is the public perceiving it? And are we able? How can we influence public behavior and also listen to their feedback? So all this, these are all different pieces that other people are doing at the University of Idaho, and collaborating then with people elsewhere, right? So we don't want to be in our own silo either of one university and another university, because there's tons of good work that's going on. And at least in my observation, it's amazing to watch the connections happen between people, and to see how when people are willing to work together, there's that synergistic feeling that comes, and you actually start to make progress. From my perspective as an educator, my job is to teach people how to think critically.
Go for it.
Regardless of what you decide, right? Like, think critically. I feel a little bit bad. I did kind of rail into my students on Monday. I got back some briefings that they had given each other. I asked them to give themselves, or to brief a partner in a piece of information that they did on assignment. I was away doing some prescribed burning in Western Oregon, and so I was not there until I really emphasized the point of the project. And I got them back, and they had all given each other 10s. And I was just mad. I said, you will never learn outside of this environment. If you choose not to learn in this environment, you're going to learn the real hard way that giving critical feedback is not the worst thing that can happen to you. And it's not a mean thing to do. It's actually way nicer than just telling everybody that you're okay. And as I am looking around as just a student of human behavior, the people that I can see that can give and receive that critical feedback are certainly happier, but also way more effective at their jobs. And so my job, my research job, is to instill in students confidence and a belief that they are good even though they make bad choices and they make mistakes sometimes, so that they can go out, because they're going to have to make some super, super hard decisions that are going to be risky, and they're going to need to know what they're talking about, and they're going to need to surround themselves with people that trust them and that they trust. So I look at it definitely from that human side, but there's lots to it. Just
I just had a question about bringing it locally. I've lived here for 35 years, and then people have always said Moscow Mountain hasn't burned in 100 years, so maybe 135 by now. What do you think is being done to, are there prescribed burns? Is there somebody that is doing a large management of Moscow Mountain, or is it just a tinderbox waiting for that big lightning strike?
So Moscow Mountain, and really like all the timber areas around here, they are heavily disturbed. They, like, not in like a crazy person way. Fire is a disturbance. Fire takes vegetation that has grown up to a certain level. It passes through a sequence of predictable stages of grass, and then shrubs, and then timber, and then mature timber, and then like one type of timber pine, and then it goes into fir. And fire takes it and it knocks it back down. We don't have very much fire around here because we have another disturbance. You guys know what that is? Logging. So we have, Moscow Mountain is entirely, probably for a teeny little percent that we are actually going to be burning this fall, a teeny little percent that all the rest of it's managed for timber production. Not that I'm saying that like because it's managed for timber production it's off the table for fire, but there is a very active rotation of disturbance. So although it has not burned for 100 and, there was, the last large fire was 1931 over on Big Meadow. But that was not.
That was a real fire, because we've had numerous 5 acres and...
Yes. Because in 2003 there was Flanagan Creek fire which burned a couple hundred acres. And then in 2015 there was the Big Lost fire that was not on Moscow Mountain but very close. And then the Strychnine fire in 2017 that was near Camp Grizzly, burned 1,000 acres. And both of those were pretty large. And so the way that those fires went down would be representative of how it would likely happen on closer to your homes, for example. So the way that those fires occurred, first of all, they were human ignited. They were not lightning ignited. That's certainly lightning's the thing. Like we've had some lightning strikes on Basalt Hill, for example, where we'll be working this fall. But they were human ignited, either by target shooting. I think target shooting is the going idea for the Strychnine fire, and I can't remember what the Big Lost fire was. Yeah, I can't remember what that one was. I think maybe operator. I could be wrong. So human caused fires, and they were lit in areas that had a significant amount of slash. So as part of the logging rules, you create slash when you harvest, and as a responsibility, you then have to treat that slash afterward. Now, I believe a lot of the places that burned in the Strychnine fire were harvested that year and slated to then be treated the following year, or that following fall. Treatment's done. Check that box. When the fires ignited, it was certainly a dry time of year, September, and when we look at our, we have what are called National Fire Danger Rating System values. And if you look at the values, the climatological values, not climatological, but the measurement values, you have things like predictors. You want to know what environmental conditions existed at the time so that we can know to look out for those in the future. Temperature, kind of. Fuel moisture, yeah. But what we have is these values that are combinations of all these other things: time of year, temperature, relative humidity, fuel moisture, and then they give you another value, like one value. One of the values that I found to be pretty correlated to the occurrence of those fires, and also when we've had our prescribed fires, they've been more active than we had expected, is burning index. Burning index is something that we use to inform staffing, for example. If burning index is a certain level, then we'll know to have this many people on hand to respond, because fires can behave in this way. So in those areas around Moscow Mountain, when we have burning index that's this certain level, the fire behavior that we see is fast growing, and especially in slash and in grass and shrubs. It goes way down in the timber, in the standing timber with like moisture underneath. Certainly there are pockets of it pushing through there, but it burned, the strychnine fire that I knew more specifically burned very well through the 15-year-old stands and very well through the grass and slash. So it burned hard for 2 days before they could get really hold on it. They called in tons of aircraft, they had tons of engines, but the financial investment on Moscow Mountain and adjoining areas is so high, and the equipment availability is also very high, that they throw the world at it. I wish I had the pictures to show you the dozer lines that were created on that fire. They were like clench your teeth, steep and long. And that fire did not burn anymore because they put so many resources, it became very expensive very fast, and it also put potentially people at that increased risk because of the increased risks that they were taking to protect that land and to protect the resources that they put there. But we do have that almost as an advantage. There are also roads all over Moscow Mountain, all over the place, versus living at the edge of a wilderness area where there's nowhere to stop it until you hit your driveway. So we have some advantages that way. Individually though, so what that means is that our forest, let's say if it were the Forest Service, they're actively managing that land. It's got lots of stuff going on it. So all you can then, not that you shouldn't just forget about it and think, oh, I'm glad those Potlatch and Bennett people are harvesting all that timber. It sure is nice to know they're taking care of our forests. But it's a contributing disturbance factor there. Individually, when recognizing where you live and the conditions that exist on your property, both your home itself and the adjoining vegetation and your neighbor's vegetation, is really important. So there's programs, many programs for that. Firewise is a big one. Understanding, so Firewise has a lot of checklists of things that you can go through around your home to make sure that you are less likely. Sometimes there's not really a lot you can do. A little ember is all it takes to start a house on fire, but there are many things that you can do to reduce the likelihood of that ember catching. And a lot of this is, we like to think, oh, I'll just do it myself. I'm going to have to make my own house Firewise. But you know what? A wall of fire hits a neighborhood, not a house necessarily. And working with your neighbors, and the way that we've seen is most successful in places like Colorado and other places, is that when a community bands together and they pull in private contractors and they say, can you thin our community? Now we're seeing some impact on the fire behavior in that community. Individual homes doing these things without connection, that's hit or miss. But community approaches are relatively successful.